A few years ago, when I was an academic, I looked at environmental exposure and how that potentially impacted human health. I looked at the link between exposure to extreme heat and pesticide and agricultural workers and diseases like chronic kidney disease. In this slide, you can see a sugarcane worker in Nicaragua who's hacking back the sugarcane stems after the field has been burnt with fire. It's an incredibly difficult, challenging job, and often one that is in extreme heat without much personal protection. I also looked at the particles that come out of volcanic emissions and the particulates that come from forest fires and how they impacted human respiratory health. I also looked at the components within the soils that farmers would walk on barefoot when there was an occurrence of this disease called podoconiosis, which is a form of non-filarial elephantiasis. And you can see in this slide here the characteristics of an Ethiopian farm worker who's been walking barefoot on this soil and has contracted podoconiosis. And this characteristic lower limb swelling and deformation, it's not just a physical deformity, it has a huge stigma in the community, much like something like leprosy. In some of my own experiments, I even used my own blood, actually, to see how the particles from volcanic ash or from the soils interacted with the blood when it got into the bloodstream. And so this was, for me, a very deeply scientific pursuit, but these endeavours were really very deeply personal for me. I was on the ground. I was with the most economically disadvantaged communities, those that are most vulnerable, those that had no choice but to go out into the environment and work in these extremely challenging conditions without much protection. I realised that as the climate is rapidly changing and getting more extreme, what we're witnessing here is not just a scientific issue, it's a public health issue, and it's going to get worse. And so that realisation helped shape my career from science into strategy and from research into policy making and innovation support. I wanted to be part of that engine that was really driving change, and I really wanted to amplify the best scientific voices to shape and influence policy. And I wanted to live in a society that was governed by these data-driven decisions that put the people and environment first. And I knew, given my background, I could make an albeit small contribution to this. This is where my idea of really contributing to leading the charge. And I look to Massachusetts as a state with the powerhouses of research and innovation. And I saw that by strategically shaping future markets, you could use that as a tool not just to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that were causing the climate impacts, but also could create a platform potentially for economic growth. And I pulled up this slide here. This was one of the first books that I got when I came over to the US. It's a children's book, and it goes through the alphabet. It's called B for Boston. It's wonderful. And this is the page U, where it says, U is for universities. Boston is a college town. Students come from near and far to earn their cap and gown. And I like to think that I was one of those coming from far over, really, to try and live the American dream. I really believed that over in America, you could achieve whatever you wanted if you worked hard enough. And now we are at a crucial moment that we need to put those dreams into action to address the two most pressing problems that we have at the moment, the rapidly changing climate and our ever-increasing need for energy. So in my position now as Managing Director of Emerging Climate Tech at Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, or MassCEC, I'm helping to lead that statewide effort to turn climate risk into economic opportunity. So a core challenge that we're facing today that you've already been made aware of is the energy being produced, the energy being added to the grid is simply not enough to meet our future energy demand. And you can see from this slide, this is energy use purely for data centers. And the percentages are given of energy use for the entire US. In the next couple of years, not the next decades, in the next couple of years, our energy use for data centers is going to double, if not triple. And this is driven by advanced computing. And these data centers really support this incredible rise in artificial intelligence, which is requiring more powerful chips and more intense cooling systems in the data center infrastructure. And we're all at a point now where we're integrating artificial intelligence into our lives. But does anybody know how much energy artificial intelligence is using? So what happens if I was to tell you that by generating one image from an AI model, you would use the equivalent energy as charging your smartphone from 0 to 100%? Makes you think. So new technologies are needed to make energy production more efficient, less carbon intensive, and ultimately drive the cost to customers down. Because we do want everybody to benefit from artificial intelligence. We want to be able to develop and commercialize new ways to put electrons on the grid and make those electrons work harder and more effectively for us. So climate tech. Climate technologies describe this broad, innovative technological array of solutions that produce and supply energy, but also help mitigate the climate impact. But it's much bigger than that. It's not just about climate mitigation. These technologies can help us adapt and become more resilient to climate change. Climate tech describes technologies that are already here and now on the market. They're familiar to you. They are the solar panels to harness the energy of the sun. They're the wind turbines to harness the energy from the wind. But fundamentally, climate tech is also about technologies that are not yet commercially available, like novel materials for long-duration energy storage, or new forms that are not yet commercially available, like fusion, and perhaps even advancing our work in nuclear fission. Innovation, fundamentally, again, is not only about brand new things, it's about improving and optimizing existing operations and processes. And so climate tech has a huge role to play in cleaning up industries like cement and steel and aviation that are notoriously difficult to decarbonize. And that's due to their reliance on very high temperature processes and therefore fossil fuels. So climate tech innovations like electrification, like the utilization of low carbon materials or hydrogen-based fuels, or even carbon capture, help us fundamentally reduce the emissions without compromising on productivity. So the deployment of climate tech, in addition, reduces our dependence on traditional sources of energy, like oil and gas, which are, as we all know, completely vulnerable to geopolitical tensions and, as we also all know, supply disruptions. So by diversifying energy systems, climate tech such as renewables, energy storage, distributed energy infrastructure can really enhance energy security and ensure that we have community resilience for times to come. I appreciate that we are in incredibly challenging times, but as history has shown, that moments of uncertainty can also be moments of transformation. And Massachusetts has cultivated one of the most advanced and resilient life sciences ecosystems, mostly due to decades of public investment, our incredible academic excellence across the Commonwealth, and a really progressive stance on industry collaboration. It enjoyed state support fundamentally from both Republican and Democratic administrations, and it was underpinned by a pipeline of talent from Massachusetts' incredible number, 122 colleges, academic institutes, and world-class hospitals. Massachusetts is a global leader in biotech and biopharma, and that long-term investment to bolster innovation and encourage collaboration in the life sciences proved indispensable during the COVID-19 pandemic. But it also has reinforced Massachusetts' reputation as the state of possible, where science and policy and community can converge to solve global health challenges. And I pull on this quote here from Jay Bradner, who was the ex-president of Novartis, who is talking about Kendall Square, which is dubbed the most innovative square mile in the world. Kendall Square is to science what New York is to finance, what Paris is to culture, and what Washington is, or was, to government. So let's consider this very simple statistic. 34% of the emissions reductions that we need to achieve our global net zero goals will come from technology that is not yet commercialized. It's not on the market. We can once again see that opportunity for Massachusetts. And states that act now will define the next generation of energy production. Massachusetts is ready to innovate, to develop, and to scale up these technologies and leverage this market opportunity. But climate tech, like the life sciences sector, is much more than just innovation. It's infrastructure, it's manufacturing, it's workforce, and it's exports. So building this robust, inclusive climate tech economy can help our communities become more resilient, become more equitable, but I would argue also more prosperous. So we have a game plan in Massachusetts, and that is to grow the climate tech sector and become a global leader for climate tech innovation. And again, we're not just funding innovation, we are building a whole economy around it. So for the next decade, we aim to create 35,000 jobs in climate tech, train 25,000 people, and fundamentally for our team, it is supporting the most promising and economically viable solutions in climate tech. And here's why Massachusetts is already in front. In the last year, we had 1.3 billion in venture capital flow into climate tech startups. And I will add, that is not with the Commonwealth Fusion Systems addition to this. Our universities are producing groundbreaking products and processes to decarbonize and translate the technologies that are being produced in the lab to get them into market. In Massachusetts, we have a great policy environment that supports clean energy. It supports our high-performance buildings rollout, and it supports a green workforce development program. But interestingly, one of the things that we are so proud of is that we're building these regional clusters of strength. From here in the Berkshires to Barnstable, we're recognizing the full strength and the assets that we have across the Commonwealth to come together to be a team. But we are at a pivotal moment. This is undulating all the way over, isn't it, this talk? This comes back to the pivotal moment. Federal leadership on climate has soured. Funding has been completely slashed. Messaging is inconsistent and chaotic. But the climate economy is not waiting. Markets are shifting and responding. Capital is moving, and talent is mobilizing. And in the absence of federal leadership, it is time for the US states to step up and in, and it's time for them to lead. And Massachusetts is uniquely positioned to shape policy, to drive innovation, and to activate its local economies. And this decentralized approach that we're arguing for here, fostering collaboration but also competition, allows us to collectively reach our climate goals faster. State leadership can also help us decrease our reliance on fossil fuels, which we know are incredibly carbon intensive, subject to geopolitical instability, and let's face it, subject to price volatility. By investing in these distributed energy systems, by investing in local manufacturing and sustainable supply chains, we can build energy independence and economic resilience to weather those storms ahead. And you know what? In Massachusetts, we're proud to be a lab for change. We're proud to be a lab for scalable climate action. And we're inviting others to join us, not just to follow, but to compete. Because as Darwin noted, natural selection and competition, they drive evolution. And in Massachusetts, we are evolving the strongest contenders in the race to develop climate tech. What can other states learn from Massachusetts? Treat climate tech as economic development, not just environmental policy. Invest in your regional strengths and assets, from people and workforce to facilities and infrastructure. Use public capital to unlock and leverage private capital. You can use grant programs, tax incentive schemes, and state-level procurement. Build an inclusive and collaborative ecosystem so that the innovation that you are developing benefits all. And my background in environmental science really taught me to appreciate the kind of systems, that really nothing is binary, that there are far-reaching implications that need to be explored. And so this systems thinking really now guides our approach to climate tech. Innovation does not happen in isolation. As with the life sciences sector, to build out a sustainable ecosystem requires long-term investment. It requires, at a bare minimum, state-level bipartisan support. It requires cross-collaboration between academia, industry and government, and policy alignment to de-risk those investments and accelerate the deployment of climate tech into the community. And of course, it requires community engagement. So this long-term economic vision and state leadership is so fundamental because the climate tech economy, I would argue, is not just a niche or a niche, it is the next industrial revolution. And believe me, I get the irony here that you have a Brit standing on stage in front of you advocating for state leadership, basically saying, who is the federal government to tell us what to do? Innovation is what we do best here in Massachusetts, and we should continue doing it. And we should double down our efforts now we're in times of peril. So the climate crisis is real. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But so is that economic opportunity. And Massachusetts is proving that climate leadership and economic growth are not in conflict. They're absolutely intertwined. We can build a future where climate tech drives prosperity, it drives resilience, and it supports equity. But we can't do it alone. So this is a call for and to action. Let's lead with this vision and this strategy to help address both the immediate crisis of energy demand and climate change. And in this challenging time, let's not forget the power of local and state action. And I'm just going to leave you with one phrase that was deployed during the UK in World War II that I think is quite fitting for this time. Keep calm and carry on. Thank you.